up, man?
What's happening? How you doing?
Good, man. That sounded great. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. It was fun.
So let me ask you something. We live in like this age of EPs and singles, and you dropped 2 albums this year. So what can I make out of that?
Well, I grew up with records. I still like, full albums per se, records, whatever you want to call it. I just like it as like a film, as a story, as a book, as a piece of time. And I still buy a lot of vinyl. I think more people are buying vinyl these days. And I know people's attention spans, some people are like instant, like delete here, look at this. But for me, that's the way I like to represent my music. I always did records since my first solo album and, full length. And that's what we did. I didn't make a record for 5 years, so I had a lot of songs. We ended up making 2 records, New York Before the War, which came out in April. And then about 3 weeks ago was Outsiders, the new record. And they were both done during the last, I guess, out of those 5 years, closer to more of their release. The first couple of years of the 5-year break, I was touring a lot on the previous record, which is called Love It to Life. But it just felt like there was suddenly writer's block, and then suddenly there was a ton of songs and almost 3 records. So we're out supporting Outsiders now and touring behind that one. So.
Were you playing any of the songs from Outsiders, like when you were touring for the last one?
Yeah, some of the songs, I like to road test songs. I like to get them out in front of people. Like, you could write a song in your little room or your dressing room, your apartment, but to get out and play it with the band and then play it in front of live human beings. A lot of people sit at home and they watch YouTube or they, like to shop online, but there's something that I really back about the communal experience that rock music or any kind of music is culturally, to bring people out, get in this dark room with strangers and people you know and people your friends, and go to a show. I think there's something that really happens there. A lot of people are on their phones filming it to show somebody, look where I am, but if you can be in the moment and let yourself go. And so to play these songs live on a stage, sometimes before they're recorded, you can kind of hear if you're full of BS or not. It's kind of where, getting up in front of people and saying something in public is a big difference than like whispering it into your tape recorder at 3 in the morning.
How do you feel about, you brought it up, so we live in this world of over-communication, which kind of leads to absolutely no communication at all. Are you conscious of people who are filming your stuff, while you're on stage, or can you kind of look past it and just kind of?
I try to stay in the moment of where I'm at and kind of zone into the music, but you've got people shoving a camera in your face and holding it up, and everybody's doing that stuff. It seems a little bit like you wonder if they're really connected or what they need to prove or show somebody else or document. I just would hope that we can create a kind of environment when we play that we get people to lose themselves, lose their awareness of their day-to-day stuff, and just go into this state with us and be in these songs or be in the music. Or when I was a kid, I'd go to shows and it just made me forget about a lot of my problems and my pain, or it just made me feel really liberated. And that's what we're trying to do. I get out in the crowd. I like to get people on the floor dancing. I like to get them sitting on the floor singing, whatever it is to break that wall. I come from a punk rock background where, we were growing up, most of the people were on the stage at the same time as the band, and then diving off the stage. When I was a kid, I was asked to be on Saturday Night Live to dive off the stage. It was band Fear played around Halloween, a California hardcore band, and a bunch of my friends and I were jumping off the stage. Went back to junior high school that Monday, and Mr. Schlackman, the teacher's like, I know where you were. And I was like, how do you know? We all have leather jackets and shaved heads, but he knew, he recognized me. But yeah, I think it's a thing of making that connection, and that's why we tour all over the world, to get out and play these songs, but also that this kind of music is meant to be played loud, in front of people, under hot lights. And what do they say a gig is? Get it going. That's what it stands for. So get it going.
I almost feel like with the whole videotaping and all that stuff, that they should have the same rule like when you're in a photo pit. Okay, you could film during the first
2 songs or whatever.
And then you're done. And then you should be done. But anyway, talk to me about degeneration, and there's all this stuff with you. You kind of go back and forth between solo and bands and different bands and all that. And then you just mentioned in passing the Saturday Night Live thing. Have you thought about writing a book?
Started to make little notes about a book. I kind of...
Because I can only imagine the stories.
Yeah, I started playing music when I was 12 and hanging out, in New York, and I started touring when I was 14, in North America, and my first band, Heart Attack, was a hardcore band, and we used to play at all these, adult clubs and being these teenagers where I was looking for something more. But growing up in New York in, I guess, the 80s and 90s, and before it was really gentrified, and getting to see the world through punk rock, I think a lot of crazy stories happen. So I want to write a book at some point soon. I started to take little notes. I don't want it to just be about well, then I met Joey Ramone, or then I played
Right.
with Kiss. I don't want it to be too much of like, it has to be music in there, but I want to have stories of characters that, you know, I grew up with and around. Like, you know, I love books like the Basketball Diaries,
Yeah.
Jim Carroll, or the Patti Smith book was, you know, I mean, that's one in a million, but Just Kids. But I definitely want to put something together. That's definitely in the works. Writing another record is a plan. Right now, I just started writing, and I started sketching out ideas for a possible book. But it sounds so grandiose. You know, I'm an author. You know.
Yeah, but I love that you're like, well, I don't want to just say, you know, Kiss and all that. There's
Well,
also
you know,
like Springsteen, there's Green Day.
There's all kinds of
these-
stuff that's happened
Even
that's
like Ryan
really
Adams,
cool.
you know, like I mean, there's the stories that you probably have on everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff's important, but I think also just sometimes, you know,
Just
some of the
the music.
weirdos I knew in Queens, or, you know, experiences I had, you know, on the streets of New York, or, you know, funny stuff, you know, getting mugged when I was 11 trying to go to a hooker in Queens because none of the girls would kiss me, and so I thought I got to go to 42nd Street, and, you know, these guys mugged me. I never made it to the hookers, and thank God, you know, I was 11.
That's the title right there, right?
Yeah, there you go. There's the title of the book. But yeah, that's definitely something in there. I mean, when we play live acoustic, some of the tours I do, it's me stripped down alone, or me and Derek, who's on the, you know, the songs with me.
Right.
If we do it in that way, or even with the band, I'll sometimes go out in the audience and tell some stories that connect with the songs. A lot of songs on Outsiders are about, you know, characters that I knew growing up. A song like Society Sally is about high school I went to in the city, which was music driven, the school for young professionals, Quintanos. But by the time I went there, they were running a male prostitution ring out of the school. And once again, I was lucky enough not to participate, but they offered me a lot of money so I could get a real guitar, not just a Japanese guitar, a real Gibson. And they said you had to go down to hotels in Atlantic City and hang out with these women and occasionally be with men while they were gambling. And I said, I think I'll stay in biology class. But, you know, the record Outsiders has a Clash cover, Stay Free, which growing up, the Clash were a band that really spoke to me and my friends. They were a gang, they were an education, they were a lifestyle, they were a fashion statement. It opened our minds to what was going on in Central America at the time, to the draft, to, you know, reggae music, soul music. Joe Strummer and Mick Jones and the Clash were probably our professors, along with Jello Biafra and Billy Bragg and Paul Weller, and even Bruce Springsteen at a certain point when a lot of that music came out. A lot of people thought, you know, Born in USA was really patriotic. When I was growing up, I always read the lyric sheets, and I could see that it really questioned America. It wasn't some Rambo thing. And records like Nebraska, which was just so stark, and Him Alone, inspired me to really go and do my solo records, you know. And I came from a rock band and a punk band background, but I wanted to strip it down, and that's what we kind of did with The Fine Art of Self-Destruction, my first solo record, was to kind of put the focus more on the lyrics and the songs. And so I enjoy doing both. I enjoy playing with the band and being out with something really loud, but also just playing it the way it was written.
Right. Let me ask you about the state of rock and roll, because I always tell people, like, rock is far from dead, and you have to look for it. But the environment now is just so, it seems to be pop, 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 and Dave Grohl is kind of like the patron saint of rock and roll, and there's no one else who exists, at least in the mainstream.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, I think Dave's a great guy and a great drummer, and, you know, Foo Fighters definitely connect to a lot of people. I mean, and they show their respect. I mean, that you know, Sound City film, but also Sonic Highways. I mean, the studio that we did the record New York Before the War, the one from April, we did it at Magic Shop. We came in the day that the Foo Fighters were packing up, so I know Dave a little bit and see those guys. I'm friends with a couple of the guys in the band, but they came back and gave respect to the studio that is now struggling to stay open. And, you know, rock and roll music, and a lot of this needs to be recorded in a studio on analog tape, not at home on somebody's little iPod toothbrush or whatever. It needs that warmth and a room to do it, and the right equipment, and it's a certain feeling of this analog that, you know, people are jumping on the trends of vinyl and all that. But someone like Dave Grohl at least is preserving the history and the story and giving respect, you know, to groups like the Bad Brains, having them come out at Citi Field with them, and talking about DC and Chicago and bringing these musicians on. So it's good, but I think the state of rock and roll is pretty dead. I think that you have to look. It is a needle in the haystack kind of thing, and it's a format. I mean, you know, we're sitting here in a music school, but everywhere there's a Guitar Center in every mall. Everybody's kid is like a mohawk and a Ramones shirt, and the School of Rock is everywhere. It's a Broadway play, so it's not a subversive underground, you know, culture. It's a mainstream art form now, almost a pastime, a recreational sport. And so I think with anything like a love song or anything you do, you have to find an alternative way to do it, to make it your own, to make it meaningful again. And that can be tricky. But I think passion and, you know, doing what you like to do with some friends and being maybe fearless at times, I think are the keys inside of that. So.
And that's your whole career right there, in a nutshell, right?
I get scared a lot.
No, but I mean, you know,
I'm shaking up there in my tequila.
you've been fortunate, you know, whether you're, again, with a group or able to connect with just your own stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm grateful that, you know, I stayed out of straight jobs and that, you know, I've been able to do different parts of music and continue to make records, and it, you know, some folks buy it and a label puts it out, especially in these days, and, you know, that state of the business.